Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's me, Crystalline, your proactive conscious aging life coach. How are you guys doing today? I am joyful in the Lord and in the power of His might. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe, like, share, and comment on my videos. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be able to get my videos just as soon as I upload them. And for my returning subscribers, I'm glad to see you back. Today is June 1st, and May was Mental Health Awareness Month. And I actually wanted to record this video yesterday because that was the last day, but Memorial Day happened and I was having a fabulous time at my daughter's house, and so I didn't get a chance to record it, so I'm recording it today. And the reason why I'm going ahead and recording it is because this subject is so very important, the one that I'm going to talk about today, and that is mental health first aid. And that is how you can give first aid to someone who is experiencing a mental health crisis. As you know, unfortunately, we had yet another mass shooting last week at a school in Texas, in Uvalde, Texas, at the Robb Elementary School, where these children were attacked by a young man with an assault rifle. 21 people died, 19 students and 2 teachers. Supposedly, this young man did not have a history of mental health problems. However, if people were watching the signs and paying attention to him a little bit more closely, they probably would have seen the signs. Now, there's a difference between having a mental health history and having a criminal history. Of course, when you're going to buy a gun, they may not be looking for a mental health history. They might do a criminal background check. I'm not sure, but I think that's something that our lawmakers are going to be looking into. So, after that, and because of that, I thought it was very important for me to bring this subject to you today, and that is how to apply mental health first aid. Now, if you looked at my little short video a couple of days ago, I hinted at what I was going to talk about today, and that's generally what I do. I give you a little bit of smidgen of information in my short, and then I do the actual full-length video. So let's just get started with this mental health first aid. And I'm going to tell you where I'm getting this from. And actually, I'm going to be reading from here because I don't have everything memorized, but that's not the point. The point is for you guys to get the information. This is the book that I took a class from right here. It's called Mental Health First Aid USA. And this is the adult version. And you can get it at www.mentalhealthfirstaid.org. That is www.mentalhealthfirstaid.org. And I will put that in the description box so that you can go and order the book or take the class if you are so inclined. Now, what is mental health first aid? Mental health first aid is very similar just to a physical first aid. You know, if you cut yourself or you have a car accident, and people come and they give you first aid until you can get more extensive treatment. So that's what mental health first aid is. It's a first line of defense for people who are experiencing mental health crises. And so by you being able to recognize these crises that people are having, you're able to give mental health first aid as soon as you see them. Okay? Let's go on. Some of the goals of mental health first aid are, number one, to preserve life. A lot of times people that are having a mental health crisis are suicidal, or on the flip side, homicidal. So we want to preserve the life of that person or anyone that they might want to take that aggression out on. So that's the first goal of mental health first aid. The second goal is to provide and to help prevent the problem from becoming more serious. Excuse me, I meant to say it is to help prevent the problem from becoming more serious. You might catch somebody when they're just like at the very beginning of their crisis and they haven't moved on, they haven't gotten any sicker, and you can help prevent them from becoming more sick if you get a chance to talk to them. The third goal of mental health first aid is to promote and enhance recovery. And then the fourth is to provide comfort and support. Providing comfort and support is so vital. Sometimes when people are having a mental health crisis, they're just, all over the place. They're anxious, they're breathing heavily, they are sometimes just crying and expressing themselves. What you want to be able to do is to provide that support and comfort that they need. You might be the only person around at that time when the person is going through these things, and so that's what you want to do, provide comfort and support. Now, why is it important for you to know about mental health first aid? Well, number one, mental illness is very common. 46.4% of adult Americans have experienced a mental health crisis at some point in their life. You just think about that. That's almost half of our population. And especially with COVID-19, it has been like an explosion of mental health crises. Also, another crisis that has happened due to COVID-19 is an uptick of people using substances and also drinking alcohol. I guess people didn't have anything else to do, or they just became depressed and they tried to medicate that depression with substances and alcohol. And so that went way up during COVID-19, unfortunately. So yeah, mental health problems are very, very common in adults. Now, many people are not well versed about mental health problems. And so sometimes people look at those problems and they don't really recognize that it's a problem, or the individual that's experiencing the problem doesn't realize it's a problem. Also, there is a stigma associated with mental health problems. Now, this really irritates me, because if a person has heart disease, or if a person has cancer or some kind of physical ailment, that's okay. Okay, there's no stigma involved there. But if a person has a mental health problem, it's a big stigma. Oh my God, the person is crazy. The family doesn't want to say anything, so they just pretend like nothing is happening. And I think that is what goes on with a lot of these people who become serial killers and mass killers and go out and do what they do. Their family just is in a state of denial. They don't pay attention to it. They don't want that stigma to be on their family, that person was so mentally ill that they went out and did what they did. The problem with that is that the person cannot be caught beforehand before they commit a grave crime. So we really need to get rid of this stigma of mental illness in our country and pay attention to people who need help, get them the help, and let's just move on and get better. Do you agree with me? Put your answer in the comments. As a matter of fact, I love to hear your comments. I'd like us to have a discussion about this. I don't want it just to be me talking. I want us to have a discussion. So please remember to comment in the comment section. Now, sometimes people with mental health problems don't have insight. They don't know something is wrong. It's called egocentric. That means that the ego does not view the behavior as something abnormal. And so that person just doesn't know anything is wrong, unfortunately. And so that's another problem, and that's why people don't get help a lot of times, because the problem is just egocentric. So they just don't feel like anything is wrong. All right. So it's important for us to be able to recognize these behaviors so that we can, kind of gently talk to the person and let them know that, something, they might want to talk to a professional. Okay. And it's very easy to do that, as I'm going to go on, as I go on. All right. Let's see. Professional help is also not always available to a person experiencing a crisis. It's a number of reasons why that may happen. Sometimes people don't have insurance. Sometimes people are in such a state of anxiety they just can't choose someone. Just many, many reasons why people can't get professional help. They might be embarrassed to get professional help. And again, if we can just tone down this stigma and get rid of the stigma, more people would go out and try to get some help that they need. We just need to tone it way, way, way down so people can feel comfortable with seeking help. I know I feel comfortable. Why would you want to continue to feel bad and not be able to function at your 100% level when it's relatively easy nowadays to get help? Now, I'm going to tell you, some mental health crises that may arise that you will see in people are, number one, suicidal thoughts or suicidal gestures. Now, a suicidal thought, also known as a suicidal ideation, is where a person is actively talking about suicide. And a lot of times people poo-poo it and they don't take the person seriously. And they say, oh, the person just wants attention. Well, if they want that attention, then give them that attention, because we don't really know when a person is serious or not. And it's really not for us to make that judgment call. If someone says that they're suicidal, we need to take them seriously. And as I was saying, the flip side of that is homicide. But let me go back to the suicidal gestures. A suicidal gesture can take a number of forms. It can come in the form of a person doing things that are reckless. It can come in the form of a person doing self-harm, like cutting themselves. Sometimes when people are really depressed, they might do self-mutilation, and it's a way for them to feel something because they're just so depressed. That's a suicidal behavior. So we have to look at things. Sometimes when people are suicidal, they give away very valued treasures of theirs that they would never give away. Things like awards that they have won in the past, things that are precious to them. They give those things away, and they'll tell you about it. And that's their way of telling you that they are so majorly depressed that the things in their life that once gave them joy don't even give them joy anymore. So suicide is one of the things that you should look for when a person is having a mental health crisis. That is suicidal thoughts, suicidal behavior. Another thing that you should look for when a person is having a crisis that you can see is non-suicidal self-injury. For example, the person all of a sudden becomes very accident prone. And that, again, is part of that reckless behavior. So they don't actually die, what they do, from what they're doing, but it becomes reckless. It becomes apparent that the person is not feeling well. You'll know it when you see it. It's called non-suicidal behavior, non-suicidal self-injury. Again, it can take the form of self-mutilation. It can take the form of, excessive body modification. You see people who have all kind of body modifications. They have all kind of tattoos and nose rings and 35 earrings on their ears. A lot of that, you know, they want to say it's like fashion. They're choosing to do it. But a lot of those people do have mental health problems going on. They may not admit it, but those are signs. Non-suicidal self-injury. That's another one. Okay? Another thing that a person will have when they're having a crisis is panic attacks. That has to do with anxiety. A panic attack will actually feel almost exactly like a heart attack to that person that is experiencing it. They'll have shortness of breath. They'll have chest pains. They'll have, you know, they'll just be scared. They'll be sweating. There's all kinds of things that will mimic a heart attack in a person that's having a panic attack. So that's another crisis. Sometimes the person will tell you that they just had a panic attack or they're about to have a panic attack. You know, that's when you can intervene and start to apply some of our mental health first aid action plan, which I'm going to get to in a minute. So a person may have panic attacks and they'll tell you that, or you may even witness them having one. Another crisis, two more, traumatic events that happen to adults, traumatic events that happen to children. Now that's a crisis right there. Just like our poor children who had to witness their classmates being shot to death in Uvalde. And then even the last 2 weeks before that, we had the people shot up to death in the grocery store in Buffalo. Can you imagine being at the grocery store and you're just going through buying your stuff? Somebody comes in there with a gun and starts shooting everybody. Can you imagine how traumatic that is? How that will come back to you over and over again because you saw someone shot and killed right before your eyes and as an adult. And then just imagine a little child having to witness something like that. So those two are also mental health crises that people need to address. And I mean, they need to be addressed immediately because they'll cause a big problem in that person's life if they are not addressed. There are also medical emergencies, such as substance abuse, where a person might OD by accident, or they're about to OD. Those are medical mental health crises that happen for people. Also, another crisis happens when a person becomes aggressive. Whatever the aggressive behavior, whatever's causing the aggressive behavior, don't worry about it, okay? They're aggressive, they need some help. And also, paranoid or delusional behavior is a mental health crisis. Now, let me describe a delusion to you. A delusion is something that is not real, where the person is actually living in a whole other reality. And they may have thoughts that just don't jive with what's going on. And I'm going to give you two examples. And, you know, it's kind of funny so you can laugh. And see, that's another thing. You know, humor is part of life. Even when we're talking about something as serious as a mental health crisis, it's always something that's you're going to laugh about. And that's just it. You know, we use humor as a defense, and that's okay because that's how we're wired. We don't want to be so down that we can't think of anything, you know, humorous or funny. So I'm just going to tell you, okay? One kind of delusion that a person can have is a delusion of persecution, okay? That means everybody and their mother is after that person for some reason or another. Now, the person can have a delusion of grandiosity, okay? All of a sudden, they're Jesus Christ walking on water, okay? And the disciples are trying to drown them. That delusion of grandiosity puts the person on this very, very high level, you know, where everybody is trying to attack them for some reason or other because they're on that high level. Another type of delusion is called I said grandiose. Another type is a delusion that just cannot happen. It's an abnormal, even abnormal, more abnormal than just a regular delusion, and it's called a bizarre delusion. For example, I might be 70 years old and I'll say I'm pregnant. Okay, well, you know, a 70-year-old woman has a very low likelihood of being pregnant. Or let's say it's a woman who has no sexual partners, she's single, all of a sudden she's pregnant, okay? And you know, the interesting thing about these things like that is that a lot of times when people have delusions, they can actually make that happen in their body. You may have heard of something called pseudocyesis, which means a false pregnancy. The person starts growing breasts, their stomach gets big and everything. So, you know, our mental health is intricately linked to our physical health. But I digress. So let me get back. So that can be a delusion. Now, a bizarre delusion would take the form of I'm pregnant by the man in the moon. Okay, so now being pregnant, now that's something that could happen, but even though the person is old and doesn't have a sex partner, it's probably not real, but you definitely not going to be pregnant by the man in the moon. So that's called a bizarre delusion. So if you have a friend who starts telling you things like that, that is a mental health crisis. And you're going to want to talk to that person. And I'm going to tell you how we're going to talk to those people. And then, you know, if you have that thought, okay, if you have that, I'm bringing it to your attention right now that that is a delusion and a bizarre one at that. So, you know, we have to be able to learn to be introspective. We have to learn how to recognize things in our own selves before other people have to take us to the emergency room. Okay, so let's move on with our mental health first aid action plan. Now, this one is really easy to remember. It's an acronym, and the acronym is ALGE, A-L-G-E-E. And these are the ways in which we are going to apply our mental health first aid. The first letter, A, stands for assess the risk of suicide. And I'm even going to add that we want to assess for the risk of suicide and homicide, because suicide is the flip side of homicide, okay? A lot of times people have anger turned inward, which leads to depression. That depression becomes so great within them that they either want to kill themselves or others. And matter of fact, those two are criteria when you want to petition someone to go in for mental health evaluation. They have to be a danger to self or others. A lot of times, if the person is not a danger to self or others, you know, they won't even take them into the hospital. So that's the first thing. We want to assess for the risk of suicidality or homicidality. Find out. And I'm going to tell you, it is a myth that if you talk to someone and ask them if they're thinking about harming themselves or killing themselves, that you're going to cause them to do that. That is a myth. If a person is suicidal and they have, you know, plans to do this, talking about it will help them. It will curb the impulse, number one. Number two, now somebody knows about it. So now they got to think about, how can I do this without getting caught? You know, anytime you talk to somebody that's suicidal, you're going to slow that pathway down. So don't be afraid to ask the person about, you know, how they're feeling. Are they suicidal? That is the A, assess for suicidality or homicidality. The L is to listen non-judgmentally. So as you're talking to the person, you're listening. You're not saying stupid things like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You know, whatever thing that you're thinking to say, just zip your lips and listen to the person. That's the first thing that you need to do. And as you're listening non-judgmentally, because people can look at your body language and tell if you're making a judgment about them. You know, they say, oh, I'm thinking about killing myself. And you go like this. Okay, what does that say to you? Are you stupid? No. You want to keep your same affect that you had, and you want to listen to them, and you want to give empathetic responses to them. But mostly you want to listen, and you want to let them talk and speak. You don't want to jump in with an intervention. Oh, well, let's do this, let's do that. No, do not do that. They need to talk, and you need to listen. That is the L in algae. The first, G. The G stands for give reassurance and support. So you've listened to your friend or whoever it is talk about how bad they feel, and they want to commit suicide, or they want to go out and shoot up something. Okay, you've listened to that non-judgmentally. The next thing to do is give reassurance and support. So you can say something like, wow, I hear you. And you can give them a gentle arm on the shoulder, or either you can hold their hands if they let you touch them. You have to be very careful about touching people. If you reach out to touch someone and they just kind of back away, then you withdraw that touch and keep your hands right here and just continue to talk to them. Give reassurance. You could say something like, wow, I didn't know you felt like that. I'm here for you. And then you can take the conversation a little further after that. The first thing you want to let them know, though, is that they are not alone, that you're going to stay with them during this crisis, and that you're going to be there for them. And I'm going to tell you something. Say you're talking to someone on the phone, and they express these feelings, and you're busy. You're getting ready to go somewhere, and you know the person needs help. You want to make sure that they know that you're there for them. So you might say something like, can you call me back in 5 minutes? Or can I call you back in 5 minutes? Now, this is kind of, I know it's a stretch, but sometimes when a person is suicidal, if they know that they can call you back, that you're there to support them, or you're going to be there for them, they will call back. And you make sure, if you tell them that you're going to call back, you call back 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And if at all that you can put off whatever you're doing that you're in the middle of that is not as important as the person's life, then let that go. And you be there to give that reassurance and support to that person. The first E is to encourage appropriate professional help. That one is kind of a biggie because people are really stubborn. They wanted you to think that everything is all right, even though they're about to kill themselves, even though they're going off on people, even though they're homeless, even though they've been in their bedroom playing video games for 10 days straight. They haven't washed, they haven't cleaned up, they haven't eaten, but they wanted you to think that everything is all right. So you want to be gentle about that. Once you've given that support and reassurance, then you would suggest some professional help. And I also want to add to that, when you're going to suggest professional help, have somebody in mind, okay? Have a business card, have a phone number, something that where you can, point the person to where to go. Because it's so easy just to say, well, maybe you ought to see somebody, or a professional can help you. Why don't you talk to a therapist? And then the next thing they're going to say, what therapist? Okay, so be ready to help people. I'm going to put numbers in the description box that you can refer to when you need them to give your friends or yourself a number to call when you're experiencing that mental health crisis. The last E in algae is to encourage self-help and other self-care strategies. Oh my gosh, there must be a million self-help things that people can do to help themselves when they're having a mental health crisis. They can exercise. They can make sure they're getting the right amount of food, make sure they're getting water, make sure they're going outside, do things that they enjoy. Sometimes when people are very depressed, they will not do things that they enjoy because they just can't. So you can help them. You can encourage them to employ self-help strategies. And so those are our mental health first aid strategies that we can use. Now, sometimes it comes to a point where none of these things work. The person is literally flipping out, okay? That's when you need to call 911 and let the operator know that your friend or your relative, your loved one, is experiencing a mental health crisis. Describe what's going on as quickly as possible, give the address, and let the professionals come and get that person. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. Don't be scared. Don't worry about somebody seeing, the neighbors. Get your friend the help that they need. Call 911 immediately. Another thing is sometimes people are having a mental health crisis and they're just kind of, they're depressed. They're like a rag doll. You can do anything with them. So you might say, come on, I'll take you to the hospital myself. And you take that person to the hospital because they're not going to get better without somebody helping them. And that person can be you. Remember, you can save a life if you just employ these simple mental health first aid strategies. I'm going to name them again. The first one is to assess the risk of suicide, listen non-judgmentally, give support and encouragement, encourage the person to have professional help, and also encourage self-care and self-help. Know these things. I'm going to show you the book one more time. It's called Mental Health First Aid USA. You can get it at www.mentalhealthfirstaid.org. They also have classes. I took the class for this because I want to be able to help people in a mental health emergency. And I'm sure you would too. You wouldn't want someone to, hurt themselves or not get the help they need. So I am charging you guys to have these things that you know to do when you know the person is experiencing a mental health crisis. Also, if you see a child, maybe your child has a friend that is acting strange, that is exhibiting signs of a mental health problem, you can also get help for that child. Don't be embarrassed. Sometimes children are victims of childhood sexual abuse. They're being beaten. They're being abused or neglected at home, and they will act strange, and you will be able to see it. Those are the children who need your help. Don't be afraid to speak up to get that child the help they need. So, this is the video for today, and I just want to let you know that I will be covering more mental health topics as the days and weeks and months go on. And as you know, my channel is kind of geared for seriously sexy sisters over 60, but anyone can watch. But because I am kind of focused on women over 60, I'm going to talk about some mental health issues that may affect them. Now, the personality theorist Erik Erikson, he gave a theory of developmental psychology, and one of the stages of that theory is, as a person gets older, around 60, is called generativity versus stagnation. And so what that is we struggle as older adults. Say we retired, our children are gone, we have empty nest syndrome, we're by ourselves, maybe our spouses have passed on. So we're in that age group of generativity versus stagnation. What are we going to do with our lives? Are we going to stay active? Are we going to stay vital? Are we going to continue to contribute? Or are we going to just lay on the bed and watch TV all day long? That's the stagnation. So I will be doing some videos that will address those topics as well. I hope that this video has been a blessing to you and that you're able to put these things into effect at the time that you need them. It's important. We don't live in a vacuum, you guys. If we are to be able to address things that are happening in our society, we have to be equipped. We have to be well equipped. And so that's why I brought you mental health first aid today. Leave your comments down in the comments section. I want to hear from you about what you think. And, let's get this discussion rolling. I love your comments. Don't forget to please subscribe to my channel. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Mwah.